This is the 176th episode of CloudFocus Weekly for the first full week of May 2014. This episode is titled Work.com. CloudFocus Weekly is brought to you by The Permissioner, made by Arkus. Mass assign and revoke Salesforce permission sets. It truly is permission sets made easy. Available for free on the App Exchange or go to thepermissioner.com. I'm your host, Jason Atwood, and joining me to co-host, working along the timeline to the big day, is Justin Elstein. Justin, how are you doing today?
We're getting there. Pretty close. I'm doing good.
Excellent. You still keeping it real?
Still around.
Still around?
Keeping it real. Still doing my thing.
Excellent.
You know how it goes.
So this is one of our sort of a special episode. So we're going to do things a little bit different in our agenda. We're basically going to dedicate it to Work.com because we have... Because we had a chance recently, in fact, this week, this last 10 days, this period of time, to be fully integrated and get a lot of hands-on experience with Work.com.
Yeah.
So figured like it was a good time for those people who don't know about it, or some people who are maybe curious, or what our impressions are. Again, we
went through the academy.
Yeah, so we went pretty hands-on, although from a sort of training perspective, not from a using perspective. That's the next piece. So we're going to kind of talk about it like that. But before we begin, we want to remind you that Dreamforce 14 registration is open, and if you have not heard that from anybody, I don't know where you've been, because it's everywhere. I'm getting emails constantly.
Are you now? I'm not.
And registration happens at dreamforce.com, and registration will go up in, I think, 5 days? It's now currently, $7.99, $8.99?
Last I checked, it was $8. I'll go to the website, but last I checked, it was $8.99. It is still $8.99 until May 6th. So by the time you hear this,
no, this will be out before May. Ooh,
no,
maybe
doubtful. It might be a different price.
It's gonna go up. Here's a way you can
lower it.
Might
be more
it.
By the time you hear this.
You could lower it with up until I think it's October 14th. You can use this code. And it's good for nonprofits and for-profit registration.
All of you can use this.
And it's very easy. It's EC14 Arkus. So E is in egg, C is in Charlie, 14, like Dreamforce 14.
That's right.
Arkus, Arkus. I would do it all in caps just for the sake of it.
Yeah. If you can't spell Arkus.
So that's $100 off your registration. And so use that and enjoy it. I would also like to send a congratulations out to the Spring 14 MVP class.
Thank you.
Which includes us. So, okay, all right. So congratulations on being a 4-time MVP.
Thanks.
Salesforce MVP. A program we haven't talked about in a while, but basically a group of evangelists, external evangelists, so not internal Salesforce people.
For exceptional leadership, knowledge, and ongoing contribution.
Almost like you're reading it off our plaques up on the wall.
Oh, maybe I am.
Yeah, very good. An interesting thing that Salesforce does, and run by some really great people. So anyway, that's the MVP program. I think you can learn about it. Oh, I don't know. Where would you go? It's like salesforce.com/MVP, something like that?
I think I would just use the Google.
The Google?
And I would type in salesforce.com MVP blog, and I would land on the success blog, or the community blog as it is.
Yep.
And learn about it. And you can see all the new folks that are now MVPs and the folks who've been renewed, because you do have to get this renewed just like your certifications.
Yes.
You have to recertify.
Which you should also be doing recently.
Yes. I actually just took the recertification test for spring.
Speaking of recertifying, one thing you don't have to recertify for is Work.com.
No, I just got it.
Because there is no traditional certification for it. But
I feel like I was just certified.
But there is a program where you can get a deep dive into it, and we did that program, and so we thought we'd kind of share with you, the listeners, the listener folk, about what Work.com is, where it came from, the history, and what it can and cannot do right now, and maybe not roadmap, but where we could see things happening. Again, we didn't really get a roadmap, so I'm not even worried about saying anything, but I can clearly look at it just like I've looked at many, many products across the Salesforce line, and you start to see patterns. So first of all, why don't you give us a history of Work.com?
Sure. So Work.com started out as a company called Ripple. And if I remember correctly, Ripple was part of the Google Apps environment. Am I correct on that? They built it on like in that when Google Apps sort of started
the app
getting a little
engine?
bigger. I don't know if it was built on the app engine, but that's where you kind of got it, like in the
Ripple
Google
there.
store there.
Okay.
And as part of it, that's how I remember it. At least it was like a single sign-on with your Google account. And it was basically a social feedback for the enterprise. So a way for you to provide feedback to your peers, and basically called it an HR solution. But in its essence, it was, Jason, I think you do a great job hosting the podcast. It was that kind of thing, giving feedback and then giving recognition through badges. Through that, it became integrated with Chatter because the social aspect of it was very interesting to Salesforce, I'm sure, and vice versa. And the badging became an integration that existed between Salesforce and Ripple. And at some point, Salesforce bit the bullet and purchased Ripple.
That was in December 2011.
Thank you. And then rebranded it at Dreamforce 2012, I believe, Work.com.
Right. And we did our podcast. So if you want to go back, you can look for the podcast Ripple Time, which our podcast back on
102 episodes ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. So we covered it at that point. I think we both at that point also signed up for an account.
We did. We
tested it out. I was reading over the Wikipedia on Ripple, and they were saying it was a way of asking for feedback anonymously. So not being able to sit in a room and go, give me feedback, but being able to get that feedback. Sometimes they hear about the 360 degree reviews. I think so we looked at, a little bit more history. We looked at Work.com last year.
We did.
As an organization.
Maybe a little over a year ago.
I think it was just around this time.
Right around this time?
Yeah, right around this time. Because I remember looking at it, and a couple things. First of all, I was like, okay, I'm a partner of Salesforce. Give me some love. Let me see a license. Can I get a demo? No. Okay, go to Work.com. Can I sign up for a demo? No demos. I'm like, okay. How do I see if this thing, what this thing does? Well, you can watch this video. I was like, okay. And basically, at the time, Work.com had just been, this is when I think they just included it on your Chatter profile as like a link. And it was like you could then click on the link in your Chatter profile and then go over to Work.com. No real better than like a web tab. But everything you did in Work.com and everything you did over in Salesforce really didn't connect. And my feedback at the time and my view of it was, yeah, this is interesting, and I like some of the concepts, but it feels too disconnected from Salesforce. It doesn't feel like it's, it's a part of what Salesforce is. Therefore, I'm not really interested. I'm not like fully interested. And you know what? Everybody said that. Apparently, the whole world said that. So Work.com kind of took a year. They went down into their developer cave, and they basically brought it. And I'm air quoting here because we'll talk about this, but they brought it on platform. And so they rebuilt Work.com. So it now only is a Salesforce thing. It is built into Salesforce.
Correct.
You can't use Work.com without the new version anyway. And I think they kind of left some people in the dust. Mm-hmm. But you can't use Work.com without...
You log into Salesforce.
Right.
You are like a Chatter-free user with Work.com.
Right.
So when you log in, you're logging into a Salesforce org, and all you can see is Work.com data.
And there's some things. So just for those of you who are kind of thinking like, well, does it have tabs? Yes.
Yes, it does.
There are tabs. There's feedback and goals and coaching and not performance. What's the other one?
Performance.
Yeah, and performance. So you have tabs on the top. They look just like Salesforce tabs.
And calibration, if you have that.
And then you click on a tab, and then that's kind of where the separation. You're like, okay, now it no longer doesn't look like Salesforce. It looks kind of like the new Chatter stuff. So it has like the Chatter profile. It's very minimalistic, very kind of...
Well, all the Work.com stuff kind of happens on your profile page.
Yes.
They have their own tabs, but with I think it was the winter release where the profile page became more robust and had the sub tabs.
Yes.
And by default, you had the 2 tabs, your overview and your profile. Now in work.com, you have all the different tabs on your actual profile, your chatter profile page.
Right.
So you have all the badges that you've received, your recognition, you have your goals.
So do me a favor. So you went to this, you did a deep dive into work.com. Explain to me work.com like you would explain it to, let's say, I don't know, someone you're getting married to, like in 7 days.
I was going to go through the packages first,
well,
but
just
I guess
high
it
level,
makes sense to
high level. Like if you go to give someone a 2 to 3 minutes and say, what is this? And then maybe we can talk about why you would want it, but before we get into the details.
Yeah, so at a very high level, work.com is a way to collaboratively measure and collect feedback around certain things that you're doing at work. So when you're use like a salesperson as an example, you have to sell things. And how do you sell things? Well, you use your sales techniques and call people and send emails, etc. But you're tracking all of that inside of Salesforce in opportunities and leads and activities, etc. How do you get recognized for doing things like that? Work.com handles that by using recognition. How do you measure up against a team goal or an individual goal of hitting a certain sales figure? Work.com allows you to set goals and add metrics to those goals and allows you to tie the data within Salesforce that already exists and you're already working with to those metrics and goals so that you can see where you are as you progress towards hitting those goals. Work.com also allows you to ask for or give feedback from or to all of your peers who are using work.com. So you can solicit feedback from somebody. Say you went on a sales call with somebody and your role was to do, sit there and take notes. You might, at the end of the sales call, solicit some feedback from the person who you went with and say, hey, how did I do in taking notes? And they would, provide you some feedback.
Right. And I just want
in a very private space.
Well, and also a very computerized space.
Oh, yeah,
right.
yeah. It's not a conversation.
Right.
This is all happening in the system.
This is
so
all,
everything I'm describing is happening inside of Salesforce, right. Inside of the work.com modules.
Right.
It also has a private coaching space. So the culture of coaching one another, any individual person can coach any other individual person and have a really private space to communicate and collaborate around specific goals that you've set and the metrics within those goals. And you can have private notes. You have like a little private collaboration feed, chatter feed, and all that stuff bubbles into your regular chatter feed, which is nice. So all the things that you're doing sort of well integrated into your already existing system. And then finally, at the end of the day, you can use work.com to handle performance summaries or what are traditionally called reviews. So the nice part about it is I think work.com flips the performance summary on its head and thinks of it in a what traditionally is a backwards way. Because you do your performance review inside of this system where you've already captured all of the recognition that you've received from your peers, all the feedback that you've received from your peers, all of your coaching sessions, all of your goals and metrics that you've set for yourself. So you can pull from all of those data points and use them in your self-assessments, and your managers can use them as they review you, and they can see all the work that you've done over the course of time. That is public, not the private stuff. So it's a really interesting way of sort of tying performance together in a system where you're already doing all your work anyway.
Yeah, and I think the couple big picture items, as someone who's actually written reviews and done performance reviews for somebody, some even people at this table, There's a lot of people at the table. One of the concerns, one of the things that performers usually have a problem with is time period, right? If you go by year basis, January to December, I could have an employee who is great for the first 6 months or 9 months, but then it starts into like September, October, and things aren't doing well. And really, when I'm writing my performance review at the end of the year, do I remember what happened in March? Do I remember that really thing? So there's that piece of it. So one of the comments was, I use this comment about like things like Evernote and Salesforce anyway, but the person said, it's like my digital brain. It's my brain. It's where I put all that stuff that, whether it's stuff that people that we did something great. Well, I can go back and reference that. I can say, oh, look, here's all the feedback I got, right? Or here's all the, accolades, people giving me badges and saying I did a great job. Here's all the goals that I set, and here's where I did well and didn't do well throughout the year. Here's the coaching mode. So it does take sort of a lot of that, kind of air quoting HR, but HR stuff, and makes it into a system that's sort of kept a little bit. And I will say it does kind of go between, keeping it from a personal standpoint because I'm making a case for how great I'm doing. But then, there's another side to it that's sort of keeping it because there's a compliance HR piece to it as well. In either way you look at it, it's a very well-built, easy-to-use, feels natural type of tool.
The user interface totally feels like very simple.
Right. Not necessarily Salesforce simple.
No, but simple enough that like the hard part about adopting Work.com, in my opinion, is not the technology at all. The technology is simple. It's the culture shift that people have to undertake in order to think about performance as such an open and social thing. Because in reality, you are opening up the floodgates to, if you want, you can turn certain features on and keep certain features off. But all of a sudden, you're getting badges and you're getting recognition and you're getting feedback from people, or you're asking for it. And it's a very different way of thinking about like, oh wow, like instead of getting reviewed once a year, I'm sort of constantly getting reminded of these goals and metrics that I've set for myself, and I'm staring them in the face, and I'm getting mentored on them in a one-on-one basis with the coach in a system. Right. That's certainly meant to augment a little bit like a conversation that you're having one-on-one. You have that conversation still. It doesn't replace that. It just facilitates it a little bit inside of a system so that you can all be on the same page and say, well, I'm coaching you towards this goal. Here they are. Let's talk about them. And then you can jot down the notes kind of as you're talking or afterwards so that you have that as a place to reference in the future. It's totally different from a normal culture of sitting there and waiting a year or 6 months to sit with your boss once and have your 5 questions of what are your 3 main goals for the year to accomplish. You write those in December, you come back the next year in November and you look at it and you're like, I didn't do any of that stuff because the company's zigzagged through and I ended up doing something different.
And they're very disconnected. I think that's the piece that makes this more interesting, obviously, for a Salesforce user and, for a Salesforce company, is that the 2 aspects of it that I think make it killer. One is that it's in your face. It's in your chatter, right? It's in your chatter feed. It's in when you're posting something to any chatter, you then have recognition. You have the badges, so it's there. The objects, then the tabs are within your chatter profile. It's very close to where you are. And as someone who's done goals with people before, you're right. You write them down on this Word doc template. You save it in a folder, and then maybe you review it, once every 3 months or 6 months. Or Justin's saying, no, you never do.
If you're good at it.
Yeah, but this is much more there. And then the second piece, which is the piece that now why I think Work.com went from being interesting but not integrated enough into Salesforce to even really mention, to now where I think it's much better and has a long way to go, like kids out there. Like, I'm not saying it's 100%, but it's getting close, is that now you can use for all those goals. So if you think like goals is the big thing.
Let's give an example of a goal with a metric associated.
Well, that's what I'm going to explain it
ahead.
first. So you have a goal, and let's say you would have, between 3 and 6 goals for the year. So goals aren't like tasks. They're not like, take out trash or, make or sell this one big deal. They're very big, and they're very, they'd be for a year-long period, they'd be for a long period, and they'd be big. And then underneath those are these metrics. So if you think of the goal as the big thing, then underneath each goal, there's many metrics. It could be 2, 3, 4 things that sort of show whether you got to that goal. And the cool part about the metrics is they connect into Salesforce data. So
Right.
you can both track non-Salesforce data metrics, like, something did or did not get done, right?
Right.
You can connect them to other external sources. So like, oh, you passed this certification in this other system. It then updates the metric in Salesforce. Cool. Or they can be directly connected to Salesforce data reports. So I have your goal is to do, 1,000 phone calls throughout the year. I can just build a report that shows how many, assigned and whatever to you and phone calls, and therefore it's completely measurable and there's no getting around it. For Salesforce, that's amazing because it then makes the reporting engine more important. It makes adoption more important. It makes putting more stuff into Salesforce for us as a company. Well, how do the stuff we do is in Salesforce? So I could put in all the project-based stuff because it's in Salesforce. Things that are outside of Salesforce become less easy to go around or metrics, but things that are in Salesforce become much easier. So I think that's where it becomes very powerful, and where I was thrilled to see it. I was like, this is great. I'm glad to see this is where it is. And the interface for it, while having some hits and misses, like, you had to have just run the report to be able to see it, like, which I thought was just, I don't know, not a very smart thing. I don't know why, but like if you wanted to attach a metric to a report, you had to have just gone and run it, basically.
Yeah, I think they only showed like
the last 3
in a drop down. They probably just couldn't go out and query or let you query for the reports in the current interface.
Yeah, that just is strange because I'm in Salesforce. So why would it just give me like a pop-up window of every report and I could just grab one?
Maybe they will in the future.
Yeah, no,
go to the idea exchange.
And I always post things. So I think, again, from a goals and piece, the goals and metrics, really amazing. I always forget the not accolades. I want to call it accolades. Recognition.
The badges are cool.
Is cool.
We should actually talk a little bit more about the badges because people are probably familiar with them as
Foursquare.
It's also now a standard action in the publisher if you turn on work.com as kind of like a little tease, right? If you go into your setup inside of Salesforce, you'll notice that there is work.com and you can enable it, and basically it enables thanks in your org where you get 12 out of the box standard badges and that's it. So that's the free version of work.com badging and accolades and sorry, you've got me now saying the acknowledgement, right?
Knowledge.
So with that recognition,
by the way, it's taking everything in me to say we don't need those stinking badges. Sorry.
So when you actually use the pay edition of work.com, you get those real-time recognition and rewards. So there's a partnership with Amazon
through another company.
Actually, it's kind of it's with Amazon. It's not through another. You as the company can buy the gift card from Amazon. You're just typing in the gift card number or whatever it is. So basically, you can create badges and you can give permissions on who can create badges and who can create certain types of badges, and allow people to attach like Amazon gift card dollars to a badge. So, for example, if someone does an amazing job on something, you can decide to, if you have the permission to, give them a badge that has some reward to it.
Right.
The example that we were using was, on your 1 year, 5 year, 10-year anniversary at a company, you might get a badge for, 100, 500, 1,000 Amazon dollars, right? A gift card for like $1,000 for Amazon can be attached to a badge, which is pretty cool. And the badge itself shows up in your chatter feed on your profile and shows up in the sub tab, which would be in your profile, called recognition, which if you are all now in the Salesforce community, you will, in the success community, you'll notice that they rolled out work.com in the community as just using the recognition piece. And you'll see that as part of your third tab on your chatter profile called recognition.
Right. So if
I
you want
actually got one the other day.
Oh, you did. I was just looking at mine. I haven't gotten one.
I got one.
Please, someone give me recognition. But so if you look at that, go
I
into
got
the
the
success
Rockstar
community.
badge.
Go into the success community and look at your profile, and you'll see a feed overview recognition. So if you can just imagine next to that goals, next to that feedback, next to that coaching, each one of those. That's the way Work.com works. Very much very much inside your profile as these tabs, which is, one of my things is there's pieces of Work.com that feel very Salesforce-y, but then there are pieces that I don't even know what I'm looking at. I'm amazed. And I think the person who was walking us through this, we're going to let that person.
We're not gonna name any names, although we love her. It's a her.
Wow, you just broke it down to half the people.
That's all right. If
No,
someone goes into
probably
the success community, they can figure out who it is because they'll see me talking to her.
Oh,
but
we blew her mind because we were just
she was very much she knew work.com
right
really, really well. She didn't really know Salesforce.com as well.
Right.
Like she was just a typical end user of Salesforce.com, whereas work.com she had like a deep knowledge of. So it was like, oh wow, I never realized like this was different than this was different than this. But the way that you build screens or the way that you look at things, the user interface is a little different. It's more like chatter than it is like an opportunity page.
Yes.
It's more like case feed than cases. Right, it's got that kind of UI to it, which I wasn't blown away, but I also thought it was decent. It didn't look, again, it was easy to use and easy to understand. I think it probably could have been a little more responsive, if you ask me, but that's just a little I think it's trying to do too many things asynchronously, personally, for trying to.
The UI is very built and it showed this like Salesforce. And the old UI and more of the new UI, but things are on separate pages. You click on something, you go to another page. You add something, you go back to another page. It's very page-driven Salesforce navigation, and you can see it rendering and pulling down stuff, which has its pros and cons. Pros because you save your state, so you know if you're there. Work.com is very... I forgot the technology. It's like how far I've been away from web design, but where it's just everything is pulling, from one page, but pulling in the little pieces it needs, which is harder to do sometimes because then you lose state and you click on a tab and it doesn't know where you are. So there's a lot of time we had to reload the whole page just to kind of figure out where we were.
Not to be negative Nellies about it, but
no.
It looks really good. It's really easy to use. I can see where a longtime Salesforce user would be like, oh, this doesn't really look like Salesforce. Whereas a first time, I'm literally just rolling out work.com wall to wall as my performance summary and sales performance goal tracking system. They'd be like, oh, this is a cool UI for an HR system. Because that's, when you think about it, it's a really easy, super easy to use.
I used to do this in a Word doc.
Exactly.
And I still have some Word docs from before, and that was you get a Word doc, you download it from the from the intranet, and then you would go put it together
in some private folder somewhere. And
and then you'd edit it. And
I remember writing on them for some reason. Oh, I had to sign them. You had sign them.
Yeah, I made you sign them.
So let's talk about the packages and the list prices.
So the licensing,
here.
The licensing side. Right. Okay.
So there's 3 different packages for work.com. They can be standalone or they can be put on top of your existing Salesforce.com license.
Yep.
So there's Motivate, which is the first rung Oh, I should mention before I go into this, if you're on Performance Edition,
you get it.
You get it. It's included in Performance Edition. So you have full-blown,
so good for you,
the best Work.com license there is, which is called Perform, which we'll get into in a minute, is included in Performance Edition. So if you have Performance Edition, good for you. You've got Work.com. So starting with Motivate, which is $10 a user a month, you get the real-time recognition and rewards. And that's why I mentioned the rewards part of it before, because you might be saying to yourself, well, what's the difference between what I have now with the thanks and that? Well, the key is, you can create badges, your own custom ones, company badges, personal badges, and you can throw rewards on top of them, Amazon gift cards, which is really nice, right? Being able to, in an incentivized gamification world, that's what you're really looking for, the reward aspect of it, not just a badge. A badge is really nice, but give me $100 gift card and I'm a little more incentivized, right? You get chatter, obviously. You get API access to all the Work.com data, reports and dashboards, and mobile access. So that's kind of like the base. I left out a few things because it's just like Salesforce stuff.
Lots of Salesforce stuff.
We move along to the second edition, which is called Align. And this is called Align because it comes with all that stuff I already mentioned, but it comes with the goal setting. So personal, team, company goals, and being able to align them up the chain with the metrics that we talked about before. We get the coaching integrated into the sales process, so that one-on-one coaching methodology aligned to goals. We get the goals linked to Salesforce.com data, and we also get the feedback and mentoring, which is actually very interesting. We had actually a large discussion around the culture of feedback and what's appropriate and what's not. As a user, you can solicit feedback from somebody and you can give feedback to somebody. But there's also I'm soliciting feedback from a user about another person.
Right.
So there's that aspect to it. And then it's I'm giving feedback about this person to this person's manager.
Right.
Or to both.
Right.
Or, and if you're just giving it to their manager, it's private.
It cannot be shared, right?
It can't be shared. If I'm giving it to them and their manager, it's private, but to both of them.
Right.
So it's kind of a very interesting little dynamic there with the feedback. We had a lot of back and forth about it.
I think the tough thing really is culturally, again, technology-wise, you have tabs, you have things, you put in people, you put in comments, you hit go.
Right.
That's technology-wise. Culturally, it is a very hard to get your head around thing because, saying a goal, okay, a goal is a goal, but then feedback and how you can give it. And it's, again, it both has this sort of very free-form thing, but then it has sort of tighter controls. You give feedback, but then you can say who can get it, who can't get it,
well, you
and
give
whether
feedback
it's
about somebody to them or somebody else.
I understand,
So
but I'm
that's
saying
the
it
thing.
feels very and I think that the best analogy really, and it's terrible, but it's the best one, is kind of like email, but with a lot of controls around it. I can send you an email, but I can also send you an email and your boss, and I can CC your boss, and I can give feedback. Right? That's feedback.
Right.
But there's no controls around it. Once I send and go, you could forward it, you could print it out, you could send it over to HR. This has much more tighter controls. And the goal of having these things in Work.com is really for the the end user and the manager to have sort of a place to go back to. It's almost again, the example was, well, at the end of the year, if I want to go back and look at all the feedback, I could search through 500 emails or 5,000 or 5 million, right? But it's more of I want to go look at these feedback, these pieces, and the piece that had in the, performance side was that and this sort of worked with all the pieces, was that you could pull them in, which is very cool looking.
Stealing my thunder.
Well, I'm stealing your thunder for time.
Well, I was going into the Perform edition because
okay.
it's like the last edition.
Okay.
But go ahead, keep explaining it.
Yeah, well, so
Comes with performance summaries.
So performance summaries that you can build out. I'm giving you a break, so drink your water.
I'm just gonna sit here.
To give you to allow you to both build out summaries of what information you're collecting, so you could send it out to people and say, okay, it's time to collect information about people, and then as the manager, you can go in and kind of put in these, bring in pieces, the goals, the recognition, the feedback, and bring it into the performance review as sort of, I want to call it evidence. It's like, Justin is great.
Well, it's my work.
And here's my work. And here's the goal that he accomplished. Or here's the feedback he got from someone that I could say is why it's great. Or here he got badged on this, the recognition for this. I'm going to bring this into his as evidence as to why he did a good job in this particular question. Did Justin achieve great success this year? And what's so interesting is that it is both very kind of structured and I want to say old school performance review, but just done on a new school platform, because in some ways,
it was ratings. Rate this 1 to 4 or 1 to 5.
It's literally like,
and
here's a drop down.
Here's a question. Describe what Justin did really well this year.
Right.
You go in and you can quite literally just pull very easily from all the different aspects of the rest of the system. So let me look at recognition Justin's gotten this year, or in a set time period that this performance review is for. Let me go look at any feedback that's been given to him publicly. Let me go look at our one-on-one sessions or any goals that Justin set and like quote them and really with a quotation mark, just bring them
literally
right in.
Just bring in the rich text.
Yeah, it was really kind of cool. There were 4 different types of performance summaries, by the way. There was the self-evaluation, there was the peer review, there was the manager review, and then there was the skip level.
Skip level.
Which is you reviewing your manager. So
no, it's someone else outside of your...
No.
Skipping a level. It's over someone else.
It's me. Say you're my boss. It's me reviewing you. That's skip level.
I thought it was asking for someone else below, even below that.
No.
Okay. Well, maybe not.
We're just going to stare at each other.
Yeah, we're just going to stare at each other on air.
No, those are the 4. You're in this scenario. You're my boss.
Yes.
So there's the self-summary. I'm reviewing myself.
Makes total sense.
There's the peer summary. The partner who shall remain nameless reviews me.
Yes.
There's the performance review. You reviewing me.
You.
And then there's the skip level. That's me reviewing you.
Okay.
Now, 3 of those are optional when you roll out like a cycle. The
cycle. You're really even trying to use the language.
This is the product. You don't have to do yourself. You don't have to do your self review. You don't have to do the skip level, and you don't have to do a peer review of anybody. But you do have to be reviewed by your manager. Right. You can roll out all 4 in the cycle. 3 of those are optional. The only one that really is required is the manager review of the employee.
So a lot of great stuff. Let's talk about some of the sort of things that we found. I don't want to call them like negatives, but let's just call them like oddities or rooms to grow.
Matrix reporting was a place where I thought was particularly in the performance area. There was no real support for a matrix.
So know that everything it's pulling from manager is pulling literally from the user record from that field that's been forever.
The
that
manager
says
field
manager
on user.
Yeah, so that's a old school field, and that's where it pulls from. It also, while it is on platform and is in Salesforce, it is not Salesforce. So don't expect it to be Salesforce. You can't edit the UI.
No.
Which is massive.
You can build a Visualforce page around the entire user interface if you want.
I understand. But let's talk to people who are
can't drag and
listening
drop
here who are
fields onto page layouts.
Understand Salesforce. Right. There is no page layouts. There is no drag and drop. You can, in the back end, you can add stuff, but you really can't touch it. There's no list views of you can't edit a bunch of list
pre-built.
Views. They're pre-built but uneditable.
Right.
So you can't build stuff. The tabs, while there are tabs, they really land you back on Visualforce pages. So they don't tab you to what you consider a Salesforce tab. They tab you back to, you click on them and you're kind of back to the Salesforce sort of profile tab version, right? So and what other oddities? It just really is just very, it's not at the customization level. If I said one thing, it's not as customizable as Salesforce is. So when they say Work.com is now on platform, you say, great, but it is not Salesforce. It is not a bunch of custom objects or standard objects that you can go in and fine-grain control. You do not have that. It is a product. It's got a lot of features to it. There are things you can do to it. You can add things and build out stuff for your process, but it's not even done in a Salesforce way, like to add in a bunch of questions. You don't do it in like what I would consider a Salesforce way.
Right.
Performance review with related questions. I'd add question. No. You're kind of doing it this odd way. And but anyway, it is a very interesting, a very future growing company, or part of Salesforce. There, it's at that small price that it on top of your license, but I think it adds value to the license. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make the prediction that it will not cost anything as of some Dreamforce. I can see this as being Analytics Edition. I can see this as being content. I can see this as being whatever else, some other thing that they used to charge for that is just going to be built in, because it feels that way. It just feels like it's at the $5, $10, $15 a month. I feel like that's where you put it into the product, and it becomes extremely valuable, because then it becomes part of what you get, just like Performance Edition. So I could see them saying for EE, you get the Align Edition or the Motivate. I could see them totally giving you one piece of it within your license, within a certain period of time. It feels that way to me, because it's so integral. And the other thing is, it contrasts to the other things they've bought, like ExactTarget, like Buddy Media, like Radiant 6, which still feel very separate. I mean, this is like taking a big move into the Salesforce platform. It's still a long way away, but those other products are not inside of Salesforce. They are very much feel separate in a way. Right. This feels closer to home inside of Salesforce, and aligns itself with Chatter, and aligns itself
very much with Chatter,
with huge, and with mobile, and it feels like it's got a lot of,
because all these little modules we've been talking about have their own feeds inside the modules, and it's right in your regular Chatter feed as well. If
right
you
in
have
your pie hole,
right in your pie hole. So some resources for folks.
Sure.
Just to throw these out there, you can go to work.com/success.
Yep.
And from there, you can join the community Chatter group. So right inside the Success community, to talk to other folks who are already using Work.com. You can also watch some videos and look at some feature guides, as well as administrator guides. Administrator guides, you ask, why would I use that? I don't have Work.com. Well, you can go to, the developer website, which I think is brand new. So I don't even want to say developer.force.com, because I think it changed literally 2 days ago. But if you go there, it should redirect you to somewhere else, and spin up a developer edition org for yourself. And it will have Work.com inside of it, so you can play around with it a little bit.
Developer.salesforce.com and developer.force.com still work.
Developer.salesforce.com
and developer.force.com.
Right. Developer.force.com now redirects to developer.salesforce.com, which is a brand new website.
That is correct.
So enjoy that website while you're on there, and spin up a new developer org with Work.com in it, so that you can play around with it. Use the guides on Work.com/success to set up your Work.com developer instance.
Okay. It is, again, I think everybody should take a look. It's my prediction in big peak coming to Salesforce. We weren't going to do picks, because basically you didn't have a pick. But I'm going to throw out two picks. I'm going to make one your pick and one my pick.
Okay, is one going to be Google Sheets and one going to be Google Docs?
Yes!
All right. At least I knew what they were.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
So we the other day I was playing with the new version of Google Drive for iOS, which has a new feature in it that's absolutely must needed, which allows you to passcode lock Google Drive because, you put a lot of stuff in Google Drive. So anyway, you can passcode it, and all of a sudden I was looking at it and it was like, hey, you should check out these other things. It says check out Docs and check out Sheets. So anyway, there are 2 new free apps. Justin, which one do you want to pick?
I haven't used either of them.
Okay, I've used both.
Matter.
All right, well,
I have them both because it was like when I logged into the upgraded Google Drive, it was like download these, and I was like, oh, I read about these this morning. Sure.
Yeah.
So I downloaded both of them. I haven't tried them yet though.
They're both very good. They both work. They both feel good. They work. They have offline. The only thing that I'm wondering is why separate them.
I think they separated them. And you could tell me if I'm like totally off on this because
you're
I don't.
Definitely off.
All right, forget it.
Okay, now say it. So then I
can when Microsoft rolled out Office, did they roll it out as Office or did they roll it out as Word, Excel, PowerPoint?
That's why.
That's exactly.
Well, that's what
because Apple does the same thing. They have
sheets
and Pages and Keynote.
Right.
Google's following the same paradigm, which makes total sense. It does. I mean, look, I'm doing Docs or I'm doing Sheets. I'm not doing both.
Yeah.
If I want to do both, I go into Drive and I look for my stuff.
Yeah, it just feels kind of like, but that's the weird thing. I'm doing Docs. I feel like Docs and Sheets are the same thing.
They're not though. One is a spreadsheet and one is a document.
I'm dealing with documents. I'm flipping between the two. Now, if you said there was like even the PowerPoint one, I could see being a separate one. But Docs and Sheets, they're very. I'm looking at a list, and I'm like, where's the list? Where's that? Oh, it's in Sheets. I got to go look at my Sheets list.
Yeah, but you see, I think these apps are like utilities to just create stuff. Like the easy jump-off point to create new stuff, not to go to look for other things that already exist, because that's what Drive is for. That's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, but I would like...
You could tell me I'm wrong, but I'm not going to appreciate it.
I'm telling you
I'm going to hit you over the head with this plastic bottle.
But I'm telling you that when I'm looking at them and I'm doing this and using it on the thing, I'm like, oh, I'm in there because I think of it like I'm going to go to Drive to get it, and then I get it in some place, but I'm like, oh, I want to look at that other thing. I'm not kind of flipping to another app. Now, maybe it's because they can make each one more powerful, and they can put in more into one, and I get it.
They can probably update them independently so that they get updates like as they need them,
and functionally, I'm sure they're very separate on their back ends. Like Sheets and Docs,
they definitely are. I mean, you can.
But now
you can even see still remnants of like what they purchased to make Docs into Docs.
So since you stole mine, how about
I didn't steal yours.
Did you know how about Google Admin?
I didn't steal yours. Ooh, Google Admin. I want that because I'm the admin of our whole situation.
So
here. I
made another one. I made another app.
I didn't know that existed.
So Google Admin allows you. It's very basic. It's kind of like Salesforce A. It's like basic, but it allows you to go in, edit people, add people, freeze people, delete people, search for users, groups, audit logs, sort of see what people are doing. Good, nice little app. Again, you could definitely see you're on the road and you want to add a user. It's like, oh, click add a user. You're good. So Google Admin. But yeah, Sheets and Docs and the new updated Drive. I wrote my article, so it's on blog.arkusinc.com about alternatives to Google Drive or Google Drive Mobile, I think. Is that what it was? Something like that, how to handle it on mobile. This makes Google Drive, I think, kind of kill out the other things because you can bounce between Sheets and Drive and all that. And now with passcode lock, it's much faster. Anyway, these are great. I'm very impressed. Google usually doesn't do well on the iOS platform. I feel like it.
Well, you'd think they put their effort into
Android,
their own platform
Yeah.
first. They're thinking Android first. Clearly, they should be. I mean, it's their platform. I don't blame them for that, but
I do.
Well, I think you got to be on the iOS platform if you want to be taken seriously.
Yeah, it's very nice. There's a lot of little features. I was playing around with it, editing sheets and stuff. Still, the weird thing about tables, I feel like if you're gonna put out your own app, you should be able to edit a table.
Still no editing in tables.
Yeah,
that's a bummer. Yeah, we do a lot of tabling.
We do. Well,
we like tables.
Our big thing that we do every day is
we
tabling.
love us some tables.
All right, so that's it for this week of CloudFocus Weekly with our double triple pick. You can remember to go to Success Community Group where you can find the CloudFocus Weekly podcast group. Join that group.
And answer my question that I asked.
Yep, you can subscribe to it in iTunes. You can follow us in all sorts of Twitter places. Find us all in the Salesforce community group. I'll just push you into there. If you want to find out more information about Arkus, you can go to www.arkusinc.com. If you want to read the blog posts, all of them, go to blog.arkusinc.com. No blog post this week because I wrote a blog post that's going up on Salesforce. So when it goes up, I'll then say it. But they didn't want me to write one for Salesforce and post it to my own blog as well, or our own blog. Until next week, we'll be back. CloudFocus Weekly, Justin and Jason saying, enjoy those cloudy days.